So, as crazy as it sounds, my 13th album, Burnt Out Artist, is out ever since June 13th, 2026. And I just want to talk about some of the tracks, well, all of the tracks on this album, and some of the experiences that I had while making this album, both about the lyrics and about the production and the artwork and everything. I would also like to thank you in advance for listening to this album, and I would like to dedicate this album to all of the artists who ever felt burnt out throughout their entire career, or even if you're not an artist, if you ever felt like you've been doing so much and you don't feel as appreciated as you would like to, this album is for you. The first track on this album is called The Lost Jungle. So something that I notice in my songwriting is that I am very much into symbolism and double entendre as well. But for this song specifically, everything can be seen as a symbol, even though it was based on a real experience. So the song showcases this memory that this young girl has when she was around 12 or 13 years old, and she had all of these different people around her and she experienced different fun things in life, and she learns how fun it is to be adventurous, to play on a pool table on the second floor of this getaway villa, and to, safari in the jungle and see how fun escaping from your problems is, and how she learns that, this getaway cabin and all of these fun things to do, they make you stop thinking about whatever it is that you feel like you have to solve. And, she continues to use that, use that method, and that even though it feels just like a fun getaway thing, it shapes how she deals with other parts of her life throughout the next years that, she lives. And I think that is something that everyone has found in their lives. We all have different, coping mechanisms, and this is one of them. So, as one of the main themes of this album is existential crisis, the second track, Living Off of Adam, is the first, glance that you get into that theme if you fail to notice it in the first track. Living Off of Atoms. So, this is about how so many times, I'm sure you've heard this too, that people who are doing the things that you want to do at the best level possible, at the highest level possible, you can hear them saying how unsatisfied they were when they were at the top of their games. And, as this is titled Burnt Out Artist, the song mentions other successful female artists in this industry, such as Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande, and how they've opened up about, having a difficult time to ground themselves, and they were completely confused when they were, doing their best and performing out sold out concerts and sold out stadiums and having their records being real popular. And that song showcases how you start living off of atoms, the smallest things possible, you know, not sleeping well, not eating well, and feeling complete sense of confusion and very detached from yourself, even though everything is starting to, you know, look put together and as good as you want it to be. And yet, the thirst and the hunger that you have for what you want, it just doesn't, you know, it doesn't let you stop. So it's sort of a push and pull between wanting to, you know, feel solid and grounded, and yet getting to where you want. So it's it's the two sides of what being in that phase feels like. The third track on the album is called Brunette Bombshell, and it was one of the last songs that I finalized. I actually got inspired by, again, other successful females, and not necessarily only in, you know, in the music industry, but the song talks about feeling unappreciated, but, you know, some people, and maybe you're one of them, even when you were a kid, you know that you were meant for something great. And it doesn't matter what your background is, you know, your background could be amazing, but it is just not on the lane that you want it to be. You know, maybe you have, your family is really huge in IT and tech, and you might feel proud of that, but, you know, you might want to be one of the greatest painters ever. And that's just an example. And this song showcases that feeling of feeling burnt out, unappreciated, because you've been trying to, you know, get to your own lane and to do everything the way that you want it to be. And there are little crumbs of satisfaction, but it's not quite there yet. But again, you cannot stop yourself, because ever since you were a kid, you've always known that you were meant for something big. You always known that you had to do this thing the way that you are doing it. And even when you're completely exhausted and you're living off of atoms and you can't remember the last time you slept good, or, you know, what did you eat in your last meal, you just cannot stop. And that gnawing feeling doesn't go away until you get to the level that you want. So your hunger for that purpose is way bigger than any exhaustion or anything. And if you notice, this album, I'm again mostly inspired by women, and I think it's the very first album that I'm totally focused on the, you know, professional life of other successful women. And I'm really glad that I'm doing that for this album, which is why it's titled, this song is titled Brunette Bombshell. But if you're blonde, don't worry, there's also mention of blondes. The next track is called L'École de Prestige, and I wanted that song to focus on academia, which is also like a nudge to my other album, Annotated. It was my last album, it was my 12th album. L'École de Prestige is actually, only the title is French. The lyrics is English, and it is about how you can get into, you are invited to some rooms that might be prestigious, but you have the fear of who you become after you enter that room. And not because they will ruin you, but because especially I feel like artists are incredibly sensitive, and so am I. And we are very extra sensitive when it comes to our art, which means we are more, it is easier to get that feeling that we have for our art ruined if we are, spending time with the wrong kind of people. And for me, especially, I feel like academia is one of them, because yes, structure absolutely helps improve everything and builds a solid base, but especially for art, structure does not work. Art is literally, ruining the structure and stepping out of boxes. So to want to, make yourself smaller to fit into a big room, that is not satisfying for so many other artists that I've met. So if you ever feel like, you not being in certain rooms is hurting you, even though you could get into them, and people just don't understand why you're not going that way, even though on the surface it might be helpful, this song is for you. So the next track is called Only Blondes Make It, and it was the most fun song to write for this album. I had an amazing time writing it because I've been wanting to write this down and turn it into a song since 16. So this song is very story-based. It is the story of a certain scene where a young artist showcases one part of her art. In this case, it's a lyrics of a song, to a certain person who has some music background, but believes that they are bigger and more entitled than what, they should act. And especially you see that way more as a young female artist. And this song is just funny to me because it's about this girl showcasing her lyrics to this person, this older man, and he reads it, and his response is that, "Sorry kid, only blondes make it in this industry." And I think that's no critique ever top that, ever. To have this 40-year-old guitarist from a rock band telling a 16-year-old girl whose purpose in life is only to become an artist, a musician, and that person being taken back when she bites back. And I'm so glad that this character bit back, because especially when someone is feeling entitled, it is easy to shrink yourself. So sometimes you have to do the opposite of what you're feeling like. But yeah, that is a true story that happened to me when I was 16, and that entire song is based on that. And I was brutal at 16, and I'm so glad that I was. especially for this scene, but if you are a fellow female artist, don't listen to those guys, and there is so much room, and we actually need more female artists, and anyway, we need more women in this industry. So it does not come down to being blonde or brunette. Keep going. Higher Than the Clouds is the very first love album on the song, and it's the story of this young girl meeting this young guy on her way from school to her house. And he has some flaws that, she shouldn't overlook, but the thing is that even though they have like a solid connection and it's not necessarily a dangerous relationship, she keeps being committed to her purpose in life rather than focusing on, this relationship. And it's the very first song where you can see this burnt out artist choosing her art over and over, not caring how it reflects on other parts of her life and other relationships. Now, Pretty Self-Centered is, as the title can show, it is about a pretty self-centered person, and as shocking as it might sound, it is not the burnt out artist in this scenario. It is essentially a song response to another song being written about you in a negative way. And you're just like, I don't even remember your name, so I'm just enjoying the attention that you're sending my way, I guess. And it is a pretty petty teenage song, I would say. And also it is one of the very many scenarios where an artist couple going wrong, even though they weren't really a couple. Casket would be the last romantic song on the album, because I wanted the album to have some, love songs and romantic aspects of it, because, when you put something as priority number one in your life, it automatically influences anything else. And it was actually gonna be called Hard in a Casket, and it is another response song to another song being written about that person. But again, it's the same artist, but a different person from, the other tracks like Higher Than the Clouds and Pretty Self-Centered. And it's just about a casual teenage hope not working out, but still appreciating those very short moments. So Burner Email is essentially a track about how so many people in this industry might ruin your optimism and different ways that people are frauds sometimes, and the frauds that you see in the industry. And whether it is, in the management part of things or fellow musicians, unfortunately, there is not much loyalty seen, which is pretty pessimist, which is really far away from who I associate myself with and identify as. But I mean, come on, the entire album is called Burnt Out Artist, so there are some negative points, and this track is one of them. The next track is Tenants, and if you notice the writing, it says 10 ants, and ants are also the animal spirit of this album. I love choosing, symbolism for my albums, and animals is a huge part of them. But that is, again, like I said at the beginning, I love double entendre, and this is one of them. Tenants, renting somewhere, and 10 ants. So the song is mainly about how you could be put in places where you are supposed to belong, but you still feel like you're a tenant and you're not satisfied with where you are. And that could, be a place, that could be a phase you're in, that could be your career or a relationship. And the reason that I wrote 10 ants, because I wanted to mention that the spirit animal of this album are ants, and I will get into that later on. Nameless Studio is the track that I wanted to keep nameless because I didn't want to name names, but I did want to show frustration when you start a project with someone, when you get involved with someone, and when it's your art, you feel extra protective. But you have to try to adapt to new people because you have to have good connections, whatever your field is. And you have to especially have good connections when you're an artist, especially in the studio, because whatever energy that you are feeling in that studio on that day, it is directly going to affect your singing, the way the song feels, and that is going to be your legacy. So you have to have a good relationship with the people that you work with. And unfortunately, the song is about one of the times that even when you are trying, the other person isn't, and even though you had high hopes for it, because every person, they are a door to something new. It could be a great opportunity, it could be some amazing thing that you find about yourself, and it could be a trauma that you find about yourself and you want to work on that. And yeah, it just doesn't work. And that person is so wrapped up about being the master in the room that you're just kind of okay, yeah, you're the best. And I'm gonna pay you to not never ever see you again. Which is kind of sad, but that these things happen. Once you reach a certain level, there are more important things than simply status. And you kind of learn that when you are let down by the people that are supposed to be impressive and that, are supposed to be a certain way, and then, well, they're not. You kind of learn that you should not simply be impressed by very superficial things, and that not everyone deserves your respect, especially since it is something that goes both ways. It's a two-way street. And that's what Billions in Taxes is about. The track Anywhere But Here is the heart of Burnt Out Artist. As initially I wanted to title this album Anywhere But Here. And it is the same energy as Living Off of Atoms and Tenants, and how you simply sometimes know the cure to your problems, and you know what steps you should take in order to fix something or improve something or feel better about yourself and your life, but you're way too scared and you are just observing this path out of this frequency that you've been for a while. And the song doesn't get into it, but sometimes you have to do it scared. And if you need a little nudge, this song could help you. The song by my album is both like playful and educational, I would say. Because initially I started that observing how the men are in the industry versus how women are. And I saw that, I heard so many guys got good at what they were doing simply to get girls. And I've heard so many stories about how a guy became successful simply because he wanted a sports car. And again, even when men do something wrong, they don't think it's a big deal. So many, especially in the music industry, so many male artists, they screw things up and they're still like, yeah, so what? I did this terrible thing, but so what? Buy my album, come to my concert. And that is the kind of energy that we kind of have to also learn to embrace, because it would be super helpful. You're not gonna do really well standing in the corner. And once you separate everything, and especially it's the truth, so many people are amazing at what they do, but they suck at teaching it. Just because someone's a big name in whatever field you're in, that doesn't mean they're going to be a good mentor. Just because they're a kind person, that doesn't mean that they're going to be a good parent. And just because one part of someone deserves praise, it doesn't mean that all of that person deserves praise. And yet, it would be a good lesson to still be proud of what positive thing you've done and tell other people about it, and encourage other people to support you in it. That would be pretty helpful, especially again in this music industry. The song Pinteresting was a breath of fresh air. You will have people trying to take credit for what you do and how good you are, and whatever positive thing that exists in your life. I don't really like to learn about the ocean simply because of how scary it is, and we only know like 4% of it. And we don't know good things. That 4% does not involve many positive things. But there is a shark. This is a fact. Okay, I'm not making this up. It's not a theme of the album. It's real. There is a shark that, swims in the oceans and they get their own food. And this other type of fish exists. And I don't know what they're called. If you do, let me know. The second kind of fish, they swim under the shark. So wherever the shark goes, that fish swims with them. And they get the leftovers of the food that the shark gets. And people are like that too. You are the shark. When you feel powerful enough and calm enough and proud enough of what you do with your life, that second kind of fish is gonna follow you around. And it could be anyone. They could be a family member, they could be a friend, they could be a best friend, they could be a mentor, whoever. This song, Pinteresting, is about that, and you telling that second kind of fish that you are not getting the leftovers. Yeah, I think that's the best way I could explain that song, and you will realize it when you listen to it. For the stage, I was thinking about how I'm studying all of these other amazing artists And when you do that, first you realize that there is not only one path to success. The path to success is so much, we have 8 billion people in the world, we have 8 billion ways to success. Each person has their own. And that is one thing you learn when you study other people in your field. And I was doing that, and I came across some, common patterns. And one of them is how some artists chose a pseudonym, chose a stage name. And they think that their success is because of that name. And then there are other artists saying that, my entire artistic world revolves around me, so I'm keeping my name. And there has been so many times that I was hesitant between choosing a stage name, even though it would have been like a little later in my career, as I've been Hasti Mary ever since I was 12, and that's when I started getting into music. I have thought about that, and I realized that honestly, to me, Hasti Miri is my stage name, even though it was the name that I was born with. And I only feel like the real me when it's just Hasti. And that is uncommon. So I was proud to learn that lesson about myself, and seeing that even though my path is different, I'm still going to be alright. And this is one of the differences that I feel exists between me and some other artists. But this is the path that I'm taking, and I'm enjoying it, and I will continue to stay on that path as much as it gives me joy. And maybe someday I would change my mind, but I don't think I will ever change my name, artistically at least. But yeah, if you ever had any experiences like that, I would also love to know. The song Pinteresting was a breath of fresh air. You will have people trying to take credit for what you do and how good you are, and whatever positive thing that exists in your life. I don't really like to learn about the ocean simply because of how scary it is, and we only know 4% of it. And we don't know good things. That 4% does not involve many positive things. But there is a shark. This is a fact. Okay, I'm not making this up. It's not a theme of the album. It's real. There is a shark that, swims in the oceans, and they get their own food. And this other type of fish exists, and I don't know what they're called. If you do, let me know. The second kind of fish, they swim under the shark. So wherever the shark goes, that fish swims with them. And they get the leftovers of the food that the shark gets. And people are like that too. You are the shark. When you feel powerful enough and calm enough and proud enough of what you do with your life, that second kind of fish is gonna follow you around. And they could be anyone. They could be a family member, they could be a friend, they could be a best friend, they could be a mentor, whoever. This song, Pinteresting, is about that, and you telling that second kind of fish that you are not getting the leftovers. Yeah, I think that's the best way I could explain that song, and you will realize it when you listen to it. For the stage, I was thinking about how I'm studying all of these other amazing artists. And when you do that, first you realize that there is not only one path to success. The path to success is so much, we have 8 billion people in the world. We have 8 billion ways to success. Each person has their own. And that is one thing you learn when you study other people in your field. And I was doing that, and I came across some, common patterns. And one of them is how some artists chose a pseudonym, chose a stage name. And they think that their success is because of that name. And then there are other artists saying that, my entire artistic world revolves around me, so I'm keeping my name. And there has been so many times that I was hesitant between choosing a stage name, even though it would have been like a little later in my career, as I've been Hasti Mary ever since I was 12, and that's when I started getting into music. I have thought about that, and I realized that honestly, to me, Hasti Miri is my stage name, even though it was the name that I was born with. And I only feel like the real me when it's just Hasti. And that is uncommon. So I was proud to learn that lesson about myself, and seeing that even though my path is different, I'm still gonna be alright. And this is one of the differences that I feel exists between me and some other artists. But this is the path that I'm taking, and I'm enjoying it, and I will continue to stay on that path as much as it gives me joy. And maybe someday I would change my mind, but I don't think I will ever change my name, artistically at least. But yeah, if you ever had any experiences like that, I would also love to know. Even though the entire album does talk about successful women, Unbreakable Bond does not fall under that category. I've always been pretty open about how I admire the loyalty and the friendship that men have, and how I feel like men have each other's back way, way more than women, especially given that, the heart of the song Unbreakable Bond is that not in this industry, not in this life, that kind of loyalty was never found between us girls. So what's this about being a girl's girl when you didn't want me around? And how no man can ever hurt a woman the way another woman can hurt a man. And I dropped hints of that in my previous songs, and maybe I've said them in other words, but it was still getting to me, and I thought I would just, specifically make one song focused on that. And that is how Unbreakable Bond came to life. With I Existed When Nothing Did, we finished the album. First of all, I am really proud of this title. It was one of the very first songs that I wrote for the album. And if you remember, I said that, existential crisis is one of the main themes in this album, and this is one of them. So existentialism is seen in different ways, and I'm not, confirming, I'm not siding with it, but I'm not disagreeing with it either. I'm just observing it, and this last song is a clear sign of that. And one of the main reasons that I chose, it was gonna be first it was gonna be titled Don't Judge, but I feel like I really wanted to keep the name exist, because it's literally the meaning of my name. Hasti means existence, it means being, it means être. And I wanted to use that in some ways, and I'm glad that I did. And that song reflects on how I think souls are immortal. I existed when nothing did, when this world didn't exist. I existed, and I'm still gonna exist when this reality doesn't exist anymore. And how you are a product of what has happened and what is about to happen, but at any given time, you have the power of changing one thing, which would lead to changing everything, as everything is connected. So yeah, I'm really excited to end the album on that note. Again, thank you for watching these track by track. Thank you so much for watching these. And thank you so much for reading the lyrics, for listening to the album, for listening to one single track. And when you do so, I hope you have one of the best times in your life. I hope it helped you, even in one way, because I feel like art becomes a better art when it's shared with other people. So I highly appreciate that. I appreciate you spending these moments with me. And, oh, I forgot to say, the reason that I chose ants as the spirit animal of this album is because, first of all, they are extremely underrated. You know, they're very hardworking, and I don't know if you've seen this or paid attention, because I'm sure you've seen it, but an ant picks up a food 10 times bigger than itself. They're hardworking, they're really resilient, and it doesn't matter how hard it is, how long the way is, how difficult it seems, how confused they might get when it's raining and they can't find their track. They don't stop working, because that is simply what they focus on. They focus on one thing, and they do anything in their power till their last breath to get it done the way that they are designed to. Well, I think we have more control over our brain compared to animals, so, it is kind of easier for us. And for the resilient, I had to pick ants as the symbol. So if you found this, we're kind of the same species. Thank you again, and I hope to see you around soon, and for more work and arts and happiness to come.